Our reading for October 17th. Reading today comes from Paul's letter to the church at Thessalonica, 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. We'll begin reading in verse 1 down through verse 9. For you yourselves know, brothers, that our coming to you was not in vain. But though we had already suffered and been shamefully treated at Philippi, as you know, we had boldness in our God to declare to you the gospel of God, in the midst of much conflict. For our appeal does not spring from error or impurity or any attempt to deceive. But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not to please man, but to please God who tests our hearts. For we never came with words of flattery, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed. God is witness. Nor did we seek glory from people, whether from you or from others, though we could have made demands as apostles in Christ. But we were gentle among you, like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. So being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you had become very dear to us. For you remember, brothers, our labor and toil. We worked night and day that we might not be a burden to any of you, while we proclaim to you the gospel of God. A few thoughts for today. Who doesn't remember their first boss? Chances are they set the bar for all that followed. The impression they make is such that it leaves an indelible mark on those they lead. Sadly, though, there are some who take advantage of young workers to abuse or humiliate them for sport. Usually, employers will fall into two general classes: boss or leader. The boss is one that uses their authority to rule or run roughshod over those under them. A leader becomes an example and uses their influence to inspire those that work under them to become better workers and individuals. Paul reminds those in Thessalonica that he did not use his position to force them to do anything. On the contrary, he was patient, as a good parent is with their own children. He not only presented the gospel, but also gave of himself to them. That is leadership. His leadership desired the best for them. In not wanting to be a burden to them, Paul reminds them that he labored with his hands to provide for his needs. While we may think of the position of a minister as that of a full-time job in today's world, we might be surprised at the number of those who preach the gospel and work full-time in a secular job. No one knows for sure how many congregations depend upon those who labor at their own expense in preaching the gospel. Paul has said in other places that he did not want to be in debt to anyone for his work. He writes in 1 Corinthians 9:18, "What then is my reward? That when I preach the gospel I may offer the gospel without charge, so as not to make full use of my right in the gospel." However, Paul did not exclude anyone who preached from receiving wages for their labor in the Lord. He writes in 1 Corinthians 9:14, "So also the Lord directed that those who proclaim the gospel to get their living from the gospel." A question of the day. Have you thought about those who labor among you and the tenderness that they display in preaching and teaching? And finally, a thought to meditate on this day. It is not difficult to tell those who labor because something is a job and those who labor out of love. Much depends on what motivates them. Those are our thoughts for today, October 17th.